We get lots of requests about how to set up a limited palette, how to use a limited palette, and most especially about a complementary palette. Well, I'd like to show you a little process. Why would you want to set up a limited palette anyway? One reason is to get color harmony. One really limited palette, about as limited as you can get, is the complementary palette. So I want to show you a method of thinking about how to set up a complementary palette in almost any color. The best way to set up a limited palette is to begin with the color wheel. If you don't have a color wheel, you can get this one free by going to our website at DianeMize.com. In the menu, click on free materials and you'll find the color wheel that you can download and print, and you can have what I've got here. Now, why do you need the color wheel? Well, the color wheel is a way to guide your thinking about the colors that you would use to set up a limited palette. So since I'm going to be focusing on the complementary palette here, what am I looking for? I'm looking for colors that are opposite each other. That's what complementary colors are. And so I could begin with any one of these colors and find its opposite and then develop a limited palette from that. Now, I could do it two ways. One, I could start with a photograph or a scene that we already have, a scene that's out in front of us if we're in plein air, or if we have a still life set up, I could start there. Or I could simply start just making a random decision. But suppose I start with a scene such as this. Now we have two visible hues in the scene. We have blue and we have green. Now what that means is we could set up a limited palette based on either blue or green. And if you set the limited palette based on green, knowing that the opposite of green is red, you would get a different kind of palette. If you set the palette up with blue, you'll use the blue and the orange, and so that would give you two different interpretations. So let's say we're going to select blue, and we're going to set up a limited palette based on blue. Now here's one thing that you can expect. When we set up a limited palette based on blue, the complementary palette is what I'm talking about here. When we set that up based on either blue or green, we're going to not get the exact colors we're looking at, but we're going to get colors that we use to interpret. So I'm going to select blue and show you how we would go about doing that. So I'll go back to the palette for just the color wheel for just a moment. So it's going to be blue and orange. Now we have a number of kinds of blues available to us, and so the kind of blue that we find or we decide upon will determine the kind of orange. But we need to give ourselves some flexibility, because the way colors come in tubes, they won't be exact complements, but that's okay. If we can get somewhere in the range of the complementary palette, we'll be fine. So I'm going to use ultramarine blue, and I'll just start right here with ultramarine blue. Now it's very dark, so that's going to take care of part of the value we'll need in the scene, but it also needs to have a range of values. So I do something, when I set up my palette, I do something that makes that very easy, and that is I set up a value line. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that now to show you then how that can make using a limited palette a lot easier. So if we take white right here, now white is of course the lightest light. Now if we begin to add the blue into the white, we can get a very light blue, add a little bit more blue, and a little bit more blue, and a little bit more, I should say, the ultramarine blue. And what we're looking for here is a gradation that goes from the darkest dark of this blue to the lightest light. And so we can adjust that, and it doesn't have to be exact, but if we have a darkest dark, if we have a middle value, which would be about right in here, I've got a middle value palette so I can read that pretty easily there, and then go into the light. Now we have a value line of ultramarine blue from its darkest dark to its lightest light. Now we'll go for the orange. Well, orange, all the oranges are lighter. They are on the light side of the color wheel. The way the color wheel works is that the colors that come in tubes, well, they're arranged, but the traditional colors that come in the tube on the cool side tend to be darker, and then those that come in the warmer side tend to be lighter until you get to about alizarin crimson, which is very, very dark. So we're looking at orange right in here, and we see that orange, it ends up being lighter. Now we need to set up a value range of the orange, though, just as we do with the blue, so that we have the ability to work with both colors in their darkest dark and their lightest light. Now, one way we can do that is to go with a tube that we know is an orange or in the orange range. Now, one that I like to use is this Rembrandt Transparent Oxide Red. That's close enough. And so for the darkest part of the orange, I will just put the Transparent Oxide Red on the palette right here in just the darkest form. Now I have two oranges. Let me pull this out just a little bit right here, like that. Okay, this is a wonderful orange that's made by Gamblin. It's called just Transparent Orange, and it seems to be darker when it first comes out of the tube because it is transparent. You can see that now. So what I could do is to pull a little bit of that orange over to the side, on this side, to be mixed with white, and then mix this into the Transparent Oxide Red so that I get a gradation of the darkest version of orange, and this is still dark as it is here, then to a lighter version. Now here, in order to set this up, I could go to cadmium orange. Cadmium orange is available through a number of companies, so I could go to cadmium orange right here and just, you see how much lighter that cadmium orange is. Now also, instead of using the transparent oxide, the transparent orange, I could have gone directly from the Transparent Oxide Red and mix that with the cadmium orange. So you see, we have lots of flexibilities. The idea is to start out with a dark version of an orange and then come into that with a lighter version, such as we have here, and then we can move on. You see, now we have a very light orange right here, and then we can add white here and mix it into this, and we will have a value color line of the orange. Now I made that a little bit more complex than you have to make it, but the idea is to be flexible. So if you have a version of dark orange, what else could you use there? You could use burnt sienna, and you could just use cadmium orange with burnt sienna. The idea is to be flexible, just to develop a range from the darkest dark to the lightest light of that orange. Now in the next quick tip, 198, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a demonstration as to how you can take this limited palette and then use it to translate this scene. So I hope you found this helpful. Experiment with different ways of setting up a limited palette, especially a limited complementary palette, just by going to the color wheel, begin with the color and its complement, and then set up a full value range of both those colors. And then you won't need any other color to work with to develop a painting from that limited palette. So if you found this helpful, if you have a question about something that's troubling you about painting, leave us a comment right down here, make your request, and we'll put yours on the schedule. And don't forget to go to DianeMize.com and find all our full-length videos, lots of other goodies too, and ways to study live online with me. And there's your quick tip.